who's okay? You probably just got a notice that this meeting is being recorded, and then we do post them on our website afterwards as a YouTube post. So if you don't want to be in our YouTube post, this is the time for you to leave. But very rarely does anybody actually do that. So everybody, I think everybody here has been with us before and are not first timers, but we, before we do move on, in case there's anyone who has not been here before and can hear, but wishes that they could also read captions, we do have captions. Go to the bottom of your screen and you'll see a row of icons and titles. And if you go to close caption and click, it'll open, and then you just say show captions and they'll show up at the bottom of the screen. You can move those captions to the side if they're in the way. And also if the chat box is jumping up and down and obscuring the captions, you can move that to the side too. So I think almost everybody here already knows that. On the far left, there are two icons for anybody who at this point is new to Zoom. That would be amazing, but there's a little mute button on the left, and if you are not speaking, please click on that because it makes the background noise quieter. And then when you do speak, and I think David will call on the speakers, I'm not sure how we'll do that, then make sure that you unmute yourself. And if you see us all waving at you like this, that means that you haven't unmuted yourself. I think that's about all. So please do hold your questions to the end. We are going to hear from a few people. I think if we just go through all the talks, then you can direct your questions to whoever you have them for. If you want to speak at that point, again, down at the bottom, there's a reactions icon, and you just open that, and at the bottom, you'll see a hand raised. And so click on raise hand, and then we'll know that you want to speak. You can also ask a question in the chat, and which means that you can, if you don't want to actually speak yourself, David will read the chat questions. So this is our last meeting of the 2021-22 season. And as a lot of you know, we've been virtual the entire season. We've had, it's been very successful for us. We've gotten viewers from all over the country. People have been participating from New Mexico and California. We're really pleased that we have such a far reach. This year, as we've done for the past few years in this last meeting, we are celebrating the winner of the Albert B. Chen Award for New York City high school senior with hearing loss who is going on to college. We had an awards committee. There were, I think, 4 of us. We all wrote all the applications, which were all excellent, but our winners really stood out. Our winner this year is Jones T. Strell. That is his official name, and he's called Jonesy, Jonesy, and we've all been calling him Jonesy too because we like that name. Our featured speaker is Christopher Caulfield, and I will introduce him after Jonesy speaks. But now I'm going to turn this over to, no, not yet. I just want to tell you a little bit about the scholarship. It was established 2 years ago by Mr. Chen, Al, and it's made possible by funds donated by him. Mr. Chen has a severe hearing loss, and he established this scholarship to inspire younger generations to give back to the hearing community at some point in the future. This is a $5,000 scholarship for high school seniors with hearing loss, and it's used toward the pursuit of a college degree. Last year's winner was Nicole Varghese, who I was hoping would be here, but then she may actually come in later. She was a graduate of Staten Island Technical High School and is now a student at Hunter College. So Al, I'm going to turn this over to you and then you will introduce Jones. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Catherine, and thanks everyone for being here and for having me. I'm really grateful to the HLAA as well as the Scholarship Committee for making this possible. In my view, this is an example of giving back to our community. And I personally feel giving back to the hearing loss community is important because of the concept of taking care of our own. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, for example, I had jury duty online on Zoom with over 300 people. But we went through many weeks of, I was the first one in that county to be on with a hearing loss to be on this virtual jury duty selection. So they didn't know how it goes. They thought I needed sign language interpreter. I said, no, 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 that's not the way to work. They thought I was going to provide the captioning. I said, no, 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 you guys need to do that. We just went through a lot of back and forth. So now it's finally set up. So that way anyone who is has a hearing loss and needs a reasonable accommodation can get it now. And so that's an example of why it's important for those of us who have a hearing loss to be giving back and taking care of our own, because those who don't have that hearing loss don't necessarily know what's the best accommodation for us. And of course, the HLAA has so many wonderful individuals that go ahead and do this on their own initiative, as well as the group itself, and that's fantastic. And with this scholarship, I hope to inspire the younger generation to do this as well. Because I grew up with this hearing loss ever since I was a little kid, and I didn't have any accommodations, and I didn't even realize what was possible until the HLAA meeting. So I've learned that we need this kind of initiative and effort from all age groups because we're all in this together. So we established the scholarships in that hope to really reward and inspire the younger generations who've given back and to inspire them to continue to give back to the hearing loss community. And with that in mind, I'd like to thank Jonesy Strell for all that he's done before, and also to wish him best of luck for what he continues to do in the future in terms of giving back to the community. And I'd like to turn this over to Jonesy, and congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here with all of you. I've written some remarks that I'm prepared to say, and as you said, Catherine, I'll be sure to say them slowly. Make sure to take my time. Here, so I'm going to be reading off of Google Docs. So before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank the Hearing Loss Association of America, the New York City chapter, my parents. I'd like to also thank the Clark School for Hearing and Communication, and Albert B. Chen for making this scholarship possible. My name, as you already know, is Jonesy Strell. I'm 18, deaf, and I just wrapped up my last week of classes for senior year. Since birth, I've struggled with being deaf, and I've had to manage a cochlear implant and a hearing aid in order to hear. Despite the existence of this technology, I and many young people with hearing disabilities still have difficulties communicating and socially interacting with others due to our tendency to mishear information during conversations. Sometimes it can feel like you're battling against nature and life itself because you can't really control background noise, and there's not always going to be a quiet space that you can go to whenever you need to, like, say, finish a conversation. As a result, it's easy to be left behind in discussions or activities when you can't hear all the information or directions being said. And these struggles have caused me to feel at times isolated and cut off from my peers who usually don't need to ask for information to be repeated so many times. Although I'm proud to have met great people throughout my high school experience who don't judge or think of me differently because of this disability, the social challenges of hearing loss still exist for many young people. It is my mission since my work began during 2020. It's my mission to help them. And since 2020, I've been working with Clark schools for hearing and speech. in order to help improve the lives of those with hearing loss by addressing issues of social development. I've shared my own experience and taught strategies to younger students with hearing loss, such as one of the strategies I've taught them is to maintain eye contact with the person speaking, as I feel, at least for me personally, it's a way to help block out background noise. It touches my heart to watch kids learn new skills and create and understand they don't have to feel socially isolated because of their disability. I've also created research charts of contact info for pediatricians in New York, particularly audiologists and those in ear, nose, and throat doctors who specialize in hearing loss, so that we can connect parents with qualified and affordable doctors in their neighborhoods. At present, I'm also working on the first few episodes of a podcast series that I created called Hear Me Out, which is pretty much a virtual way for me to, describe the methods that I use to block out background noise and distractions. I see my focus on this mission continuing into college. This coming fall, I'll be attending George Washington University, where I intend to major in political science, then aspire to law school and even become a lawyer or go into politics. My plans to help these children with hearing loss extend beyond clerk and encompass two main categories of focus: equipment accessibility and social communication. My career plans at George Washington University put me on a path to address both of these things. I'm just going to cut in, just want to make sure that I'm not speaking too fast. Like, am I speaking at a pace that's all right with everyone?
I think you're fine. Does anyone want Jonesy to slow down? I think you're okay. Go ahead.
All right, cool. When it comes to equipment accessibility, Clark School and I've already talked about partnering in the future to help and create outreach programs in New York City that specialize in subsidizing and providing batteries, chargers, and rechargeable batteries to children who cannot afford them. We will also ensure that the people who rely on these programs have access to important equipment, such as, cases to safely store their hearing equipment whenever they, go on long flights or long travels. I aim to use the political strategies and connections that I'll acquire at George Washington to lobby for funds for these outreach programs. I also plan to continue to work on convincing state politicians to earmark more funds to existing organizations and providing resources to students in low-income areas, especially communities where English is a second language. I will also advocate that some of the funds go into the New York City Department of Education be specifically directed towards hiring more speech therapists in public schools. This will ensure that students with hearing loss and learning disabilities and learning difficulties, have the support to excel in a mainstream school environment where English is usually the primary form of communication. Speech therapy was one of the main services that helped me a lot when I was younger in elementary school and helped me learn grammar and become more comfortable whenever I was socializing with others. However, this great mission does come with challenges such as tackling student loan debt and finding people who are not only willing, but also as passionate about tackling these issues as I am. The money that I've received from the HLAA scholarship will be used, like I even have the check right here, will be used to lower the cost of my college tuition and the hours that I would have to spend paying off my paying off my student loans. This will allow me to put more effort into both my education and my ongoing plans with club school. Finally, and most importantly, with less time centered on paying off my debts, I'll be able to focus more on my classes, recording new episodes of Hear Me Out, and also concentrating on pursuing internships in politics or law with the motivation to help out those in need. I want to do more because I not only empathize with these children, but want them to be prepared for the challenges that they could face as they get older. I hope to teach them that being deaf or hard of hearing makes them special and not less of a person. Education is my path to a career where I can help others meet the challenges of their disabilities and achieve their dreams. I want to make sure that the path for others is as clear and widely accessible as possible. So I want to say thank you so much for this opportunity, as well as to the support that you've all shown me. I hope to get to meet all of you in person sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. That was really inspiring. You have amazingly good ideas. I hope maybe you'll work with our chapter. Maybe we can start to initiate some of them right now. I also hope that eventually we can vote for you for mayor. Come on back. You have lots of great ideas for what can happen in this city. I really can't tell you how inspiring that talk was. Your application was fantastic, and this is also just bears out that written proof. There's a comment in the chat box that from someone whose son with unilateral hearing loss graduated from the Clark School last year. And she or he says, thank you for sharing your vision with us and for helping the young kids with hearing loss. So after Chris talks, then we can ask questions to Jonesy. So I do want to introduce Chris Caulfield now, and we'll come back to you, Jonesy, okay? So Chris, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so Christopher Caulfield was born in Champaign, Illinois. He had profound deafness in both ears at birth. He received a cochlear implant on his left side when he was 16 months old. Because of complications from the surgery, the family opted not to give him a second cochlear implant. He graduated from Rochester Institute of Technology, and he earned a bachelor's degree and published 2 research papers in the field of human-computer interaction and accessibility. Instead of pursuing a PhD opportunity, as he might have done, he decided to attend Cornell University for his master's degree in computer science. Christopher is now a product manager at Microsoft on the Xbox team. And I had to ask Christopher what the Xbox was because I am old and I don't even have young children at home anymore. So I imagine that's true for some of our other attendees here. If you have a chance, you might just give us a rundown on the Xbox. In addition to speaking about growing up with his hearing loss, he's going to talk to us about his experiences in academia and the workplace. So Chris, it's all yours. Thank you.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Can you see my screen here? Yeah, okay, cool.
Yep.
Let's see here. Okay, so is it Jones, right? Jones, that pronounced, or Jonas?
Hi, Chris, it's Jones or Jonesy with Jonesy with the Y.
But Jonesy.
Jonesy, okay. Hey, first off, I just want to say awesome speech and congratulations to you. You deserve this, and it sounds like you had a great application. I wish I could, get a chance to read it, and I'm sure I will maybe at some point. Or I definitely want to hear about how your plans turn out. I'm just super excited for you. I love what you had to say. These are all things that I experienced as well, just like you. And I'm glad that you're taking the initiative to go and try to take on these challenges. So I'm going to start here with this beautiful picture of 3 different roads, and this is kind of like, when I think of a journey, and we're all on this journey. You've personally wrapped up high school. I wrapped up college not recently, but I wrapped up college at one point. I wrapped up high school at one point. I'm still on a journey. It's just the beginning for me, but it's really also big time the beginning for you. You're going to college. You're going to be independent. You're going to make a lot of independent decisions. Your parents won't be around as much as they used to be when you're in high school, and so you'll get to decide what classes you want to take, how you want to spend your time, who you want to spend your time with, and all these decisions are going to play a huge role in your journey and where your life takes you. And so I kind of just wanted to talk a little bit about myself, my journey that I'm in today, just so you have some example. And then I want to talk a little bit about some recommendations to you and also to others here as you continue your journey and also their journey. And then at the end, we can do some Q&A So a little bit about me, born in central Illinois. We talked a bit about that earlier. Very cold there, but also amazing sunset views, awesome cornfields that just go super high during July. It's funny because people say, you know, be high by 4th of July, but I would say it's like head high. It's pretty tall corn. That's just one of the jokes I always have to tell people, but it's also true. So deaf in both ears. I have a cochlear implant one. My parents decided not to get bilateral implants. And what's interesting about my childhood is that I received a lot of speech therapy, just like I'm sure all of you did at some point. But I didn't really know a lot of people with hearing loss. I knew some people with hearing loss, but not like the kind of scenario that I had of like profoundly deaf with a cochlear implant trying to verbally speak. I knew some people that were hard of hearing that could hear in one ear. I knew some people that did only American Sign Language as their primary method of communication. So there's a lot of different flavors of hearing loss, but I didn't really meet a lot of people like myself personally. So that was like one of the challenges I faced. But during high school, I actually picked up a ton of American Sign Language, and I love American Sign Language. I highly recommend it. It's just such a beautiful language. And outside of my childhood, you know, deaf life, I really enjoyed playing basketball, and I played a ton of video games as well. Okay, so next slide here. So a little bit about my college life. So I went to, as it was said, I went to Rochester Institute of Technology, studied computer science there. Then I went over to Cornell for my master's program and studied computer science there as well. And during college, I just loved getting involved on campus. I was a resident advisor. I did research in the space of accessibility. I published 2 research papers. And then I was also a teaching assistant where I actually taught a couple of classes and did a lot of grading of papers. So a lot of really rich and fun experiences where I learned so much in each of those roles. So I wanted to talk about my research a little bit more because I thought that people might find it interesting. And so the research that I focused on was within the world of captions. So there was a professor, his name was Matt Runefeld. We'll just call him Matt. So my sophomore year of college, Matt and I, we talked about our passions in the speech transcription space around speech to text technology, just like we're seeing here with the captions. One of the things we realized was that, as you all know, is that captions are not always accurate. So you can actually see that on this slide here, this example, where maybe I say, hi, how are you doing? But then the captioning output shows something along the lines of, bye, how are you moving? Which is, you know, the bye is incorrect and the moving is incorrect. So this, for me personally, like this kind of scenario we're seeing, like I could probably differentiate what the caption showed to what I heard and say, okay, like it's not accurate. But then there are some deaf and hard of hearing individuals who might look at captions completely. And it's really important that maybe they can be informed on the inaccuracy in the caption output. And so that was kind of the study that we wanted to do, was that we wanted to understand how to present inaccurate captioning output to users. So we did 2 studies. We did one that was a pilot study on 21 deaf and hard of hearing participants. And then we did a primary study on about 100 plus deaf and hard of hearing participants. And so in this study, we had different caption stylings, as you can see on this slide. So this first picture is just showing caption output raw as it is, without any sort of transcription changes. But then in the next pictures here, you see changes in the text itself. So for example, the one below this one shows a case where we have bolded confident text words, and we kept the irregular, inaccurate, uncertain text output as it is. So that's one example. We have another example of where we have the text output and then we bolden the words that were uncertain in the text output. So you kind of get the idea of us changing all these different ways of presenting text output. We also, changed the color for green for confident words, red for unconfident. We thought about changing the size of the text. We thought about removing words, changing the opacity of words. So that's kind of like the design. And so what we did then was we did a pilot study. We narrowed it down to 4 text output styles, and we did a all-out quantitative study and qualitative study. So here's our findings. So what we found, and I think this is super interesting. So from a quantitative perspective, before the study, we would talk to each of the participants that would come to the study, and we would ask them, what are your thoughts around us doing some sort of text transcription styling of inaccurate words? And what we found was that a lot, like the majority, expressed interest in this, like this is something that they wanted, and it could maybe benefit their ability to understand captions. But after we showed them the prototype of the captioning with the style words, we found that, so we did a survey after, and they basically said, you know what, like we do not want any styling at all. Like we don't want anything. We just want the raw text output. And so that was our findings from a quantitative perspective, and you can actually see that here on the right. So this 66.4% represents, basically the majority of people saying that this is my like preferred way of having style. Basically no change at all to text is what they preferred. So super interesting. From a qualitative perspective, we also just asked questions about just in general, what do you find interesting about this experiment? And number one, they say accuracy is incredibly important. We just care about getting closer and closer to this perfect captioning output. They also talked about the idea of having multiple microphones that could pick up multiple speakers. They talked about how when we did do styling of captions, that it was incredibly complicated. It also provided a lot of distraction to the captions, and so they preferred just no styling at all. And then finally, they talked about the different kind of scenarios that this technology would be useful in. So they talked about public places. They talked about maybe going to a doctor's appointment and using it, family gatherings, events, and meetings. So that was the study. I published 2 papers in this space in 2 big major conferences. And what I found was really fascinating from our findings was that Google, Zoom, Microsoft all leveraged our findings. And you see that today with this captioning. Do you see any styling in it by default? The answer is no. And the reason why is because these companies are incredibly data-driven. They want to have evidence in their decisions behind the design of these captions. And our research and our findings was a huge critical piece to their decision not to style captions. And so it's huge to see that impact that we've made. And Google personally had moved forward and funded our project even more to continue doing studies in this space. So huge impact. So that was a little bit about the research that I did. And I just recommend you to also try doing research in college. It's so good, and you'll learn so much from it. So hopping into after college, so I did a startup for about 1.5 years. I really enjoyed it a lot. I worked all the time. I learned so much, though. I made 2 of my closest friends through it. And then, I decided I needed to move on to a new role where, I could have maybe more of a work-life balance. And I also wanted to check out the Pacific Northwest. And so I joined Microsoft. I worked in the cloud computing vertical at Microsoft. And then I switched over to Xbox, which is the gaming vertical within Microsoft. So Xbox basically makes video game consoles. They also make controllers, just like this one here. And I've really enjoyed my time so far on Xbox. It's been so good to me. Microsoft has a great culture for work-life balance. They have a great culture for diversity and inclusion. And it's a great place to work, and I highly recommend it to anybody. So a little bit about me personally. So these are some of my hobbies these days. Really enjoy hiking. I play a lot of basketball. I do a lot of running and walking. I like to swim. And I also love eating at restaurants. And also I go on a lot of vacations. I would say I spend a lot of money on vacations. I just really treasure that, work hard and then treat yourself to a really nice vacation. So that's another thing I like to do. So here's some of my favorite pictures that I've taken so far in the Pacific Northwest in Washington. So the top picture here is in Olympic National Park, which is the most northeastern part of our, the main basin of our country, if you're not including Alaska. It's called Mount Storm King. It's in Olympic National Park. It's super beautiful, quite an intense hike to get up there. On the bottom left is Mount Rainier, which might ring a bell to most of you. It's our biggest mountain in the state of Washington. It's also incredibly iconic. Like so many people love mountaineering to the top of that thing every year. And it's also like on the license plate of most cars in Washington is a picture of Mount Rainier. And then this one here is Kolchak Lake, which is actually where I proposed to my fiance, Rachel. And by the way, I forgot to mention that in this picture, this is my fiance. We both got engaged a few months ago, and we'll be getting married very soon. So super exciting time for us. I hope she doesn't watch this video and realize that I skipped mentioning her. So I'll be sure not to share the video afterwards, or maybe we can do some edits and flip it. That's just a joke. It's all good. So that's a little bit about me. I did want to talk about just my journey so far and some of my recommendations for you and others as you continue your journey. And a lot of these are just based off my experiences. So number one, I highly recommend finding mentors. Mentors have honestly changed everything for me. They have been the ones who have been in my shoes before, or kind of can relate to the experience I was going through and just point me in the right direction. That's really what it came down to. And so, for example, like sophomore year of college at RIT, I was incredibly close to dropping out. Like I was doing okay in my classes, like I was like getting good grades. It wasn't an issue with the school. It was just an issue from the perspective of, why do I go to college? Like, what's the point? Like, maybe I could just start working now. Like, I feel like I have the essential skill sets. And so I went to my academic advisor, whose name is also Matt. It's a different Matt from earlier. And I told him about the challenges and the interests that I had in accessibility. And Matt Lake, his name, he pointed me to Matt Lunafeld, who's the other Matt, who is the professor in the accessibility space. He introduced me to him. Matt and I got to know each other, and Matt hired me as a researcher at RIT. And that just gave me so much more purpose to be in college. And then that point forward, I did research for 2 to 2.5 years. I published 2 papers, as I talked about. I got the chance to meet so many PhD students, so many faculty. I got to go on some really cool trips. And so, yeah, it's just, it all started with a connection with Matt Lake, and he really changed things around. And then Matt Lake is another person, or sorry, Matt Unafeld, my professor, is another incredible mentor to me. He saw I was doing really well with my research. He encouraged me to get a PhD, but he also asked about just my career interests, and we worked together to figure out, like, should I get the PhD and become a professor? Should I just start working in industry? And so he started referring me to all these different colleges, wrote me an incredible letter of recommendation, and he was one of the big reasons why I got into Cornell. He helped me get into every single graduate program that I applied to. I applied to Georgia Tech, I applied to University of Washington, I applied to Carnegie Mellon, I applied to Cornell, and I got into all of them, and Matt was a huge piece of that. And so those are just two examples of where mentorship has changed my life. And so mentors, again, are there for you to help identify your career interests, your direction in life. They also really identify your strengths and opportunities, and they're also there to give you feedback and help you grow on your journey. And another huge area of mentorship for me was also in the world of hearing loss. I didn't really know a lot of people that had a awesome, successful career trajectory, and also had hearing loss. I knew people that had successful career trajectories, but I didn't know a lot of people within the world of hearing loss. And so I was able to be mentored by a couple people with hearing loss and also work in industry. And they just helped build my confidence and really gave me that understanding of my full potential. And then last but not least, I can always say that, I had a mentor that got me my most recent role at Xbox. So yeah, like mentors for the win, I highly recommend. So when it comes to getting a mentor, you got to network. This is huge. And I recommend every day try to meet somebody new. I know that sounds aggressive, but I try to do that. And I just feel like every day I meet somebody new, they're going to be a future business partner. They're going to be a future mentor of mine. Maybe they're going to be my next best friend. And in each of those conversations, you're going to learn something new from them. You're going to pick up new skills, and maybe they're going to help kind of pivot your journey based on the conversation that you have with them. And then number three, I recommend taking advantage, or number three, I recommend getting exposure to the diverse disability community. And what I mean by this is that, I have my own flavor of disability. I'm deaf, I have a cochlear implant, but there's also people who have no cochlear implant at all. There's people who have bilateral cochlear implants. And it's super important to meet all these different people and just understand their culture, understand their perspective, understand their communication style. And then during those conversations, you'll be able to identify similarities in your childhood and in your ambitions and how they're similar and different to the person that you meet. And going off of that, I highly recommend, again, to learn American Sign Language. It's a beautiful language. It's going to open so many doors and more people that you can talk to within the deaf community. So definitely recommend that. And also, like, aside from the world of hearing loss, there's so many other disability types, and just having those conversations with those people as well and getting to know them, building friendships, you're going to learn so much more and just build this huge appreciation and perspective for disability across the board. So another big one here is take advantage of the accessibility and accommodation resources. I don't know if this applies directly to you, but I know for a lot of people, including myself at one point, I did not take advantage of the accommodations that I could have been given. And it did actually have a huge impact on my performance. And so it's incredibly important to make sure that you have the resources that are going to equip you for success. And so going off at that, number 5, don't hesitate to call out your peers if you're experiencing a communication barrier. So previously I talked about getting yourself equipped with accommodations, but I also recommend making sure that you're very vocal about your preferences for communication. and having, open conversations with your friends or with your team or your partners in your class projects about your hearing loss, and share with them your preferences so that you're both on the same page. And then with that, you can also provide recommendations for the most effective communication. And so one tactic that I've been using recently that's been super helpful is if I meet somebody new, they'll often look straight at my cochlear implant, and I'll say, "Oh, did you find that interesting?" Or, "Oh, were you looking at my implant?" And that kind of breaks the ice right there. Like they're not thinking in their head, "What is that thing on his head?" Or like, "How does that work? Oh, like, does he understand what I'm saying?" Or, "Oh, like, is that a new Apple device?" Like I'm able to acknowledge that they saw it, and then I can tell them about it. I can talk to them about hearing loss. They might ask more questions. I can then follow up with, "Hey, just FYI, I hear best on my left side and also face to face. So just keep that in mind. I really appreciate it." So that's just one example of within, let's just call it 2 to 5 minutes, you've been able to break the ice. You've been able to get on the same page about your disability. And if they have any further questions, like they can always ask you because you've kind of opened up that door. So it's really important to make sure that you're being vocal about your disability and expressing what works best for you. And then number 6, this is something I also messed up on. Number 6 is stay consistent with your audiology appointments. Unfortunately, in college, I did not go to my audiology appointments, and it resulted in me not being able to hear as perfectly as I could because, in every audiology appointment you go to, they're going to tune that implant or hearing aid a little bit more to make sure you're hearing your best. And I probably skipped 2 years worth of audiology appointments, and it really hit me hard when I started not to hear well. So I definitely be consistent with that. And then to wrap up here, it's important to know that you're not alone, right? Like this is that picture I showed at the beginning. I talked a little bit about my journey. I gave you and everyone some recommendations about how to navigate your journey. But just realize that we're all on our own journeys, and we're all experiencing our own accomplishments, just like you're experiencing today. I experienced an accomplishment last week, but I'll be honest, like this week has been a really long week for me with my career. And so like, we're all like in our highs and lows. And so just know that, and just make sure you always bring your best and build a great support net around you as you take on your journey. And then lastly, I will finish with, have so much fun in college. It's college. You're going to only do it once unless you go back to school for your MBA, but college is a one-time thing. Embrace it, take full advantage of it. And congratulations again. And thanks for having me speak.
Thank you, Chris. We need you to take down your PowerPoint. Okay, thank you. That was a fantastic speech, completely fascinating about your work, and really inspiring. And I'm sure a lot of people have questions. I have just one thing to say about the captioning the study you did, which is really interesting. I think I too would have come out with the rest of them that, just plain and simple white on black is good. We have cart captioning in this meeting, so we have a live captioner, but I imagine the same principles apply with the live captioner as with the ASR captions. In general, the live captioners are more accurate, much less likely to have the kind of mix-ups that you mentioned. So we're really lucky to have a great cart captioner. Our usual captioner owns the caption company. She couldn't be with us tonight, but The captioner she sent is doing a fantastic job too. Thank you very much. So John, who is, I know people are going to have questions. I just want to ask you a couple of questions that John, who is in not able to speak in the place where he is, sent me a couple of notes. One was that he had seen when you were in, I think when you were still in Rochester, you were working on a Google Glass project that with captions. I think I knew something about that, and I think it was they stopped. They just gave it up. Do you know anything about that? Were you working on it?
I wasn't working directly on Google Glass, but in my master's degree at Cornell, I did do work that intersected with projects related to Google Glass, but not Google Glass specifically.
Yeah.
So,
And that project was abandoned, right? They're not doing that anymore.
yeah, from my understanding, like I don't have any insider knowledge, but yeah, the Google Glass project was abandoned. However, I'm sure most of you know that there's a lot of excitement now about this whole metaverse thing. And so Google Glass is a concept that fits within that metaverse world. And so I wouldn't be surprised if they bring back that project. So we'll see. I'm excited though to see where this world of what I call augmented reality goes. I think it's super important.
Yeah. I think if Jonesy, if you have any questions, I think we would let you go first. Do you have any questions?
For Christopher, I'd say, when you're operating in a college environment, especially with very big classes, like I'm sure you had some classes that were very small or some that were very big. I'm curious that especially in those big classes, how did you get over challenges it comes to hearing the teacher, especially when you're dealing with a class that's like really big and there's so many people?
Yeah, that's a good question. I personally just there's like a lot of different scenarios that are happening in those big classrooms. From my experience, I was lucky that those big classes, it was just one person talking at a time. So I would just give my professor my FM microphone that they wear, like the wireless microphone. They wear that, and then that professor is like talking the whole time. And so I never had any issues with getting distracted or not. Yeah. But there was one pain point that I had, which was around the case where maybe a student would ask a question and you can't hear the student because you're so focused on the teacher. And so in that case, believe it or not, I would hold the teacher accountable to repeat the question. I would say, can you repeat the question? And that's also, by the way, what professors should be doing is they should be repeating the question. So I would basically have the teacher repeat the question. And if they didn't repeat the question, I would say, Mr. Mike, can you repeat the question? So that was one of the big scenarios that I was very proactive about. There's also the scenario of where you're doing like group projects, and in those cases, sometimes they'd be doing group projects in the classroom. And so it's like really noisy, you got the background noise going on, and sometimes it's hard to hear your team members. And so I always was very vocal in making sure that in those cases, we would get a table away from the loud part of the room, like, hey, in the corner of the room, not in the middle of the room. And then I would also use my FM system and put it in the middle of the table so that I could hear what everybody was saying. So I'm happy to talk to you more about that. Just feel free to reach out. And so some of these things kind of go with it, see what happens, and then, you know, make those changes as you go and figure out what's best for you.
Thanks for that answer. I think what you said about repeating the question is something that all public speakers should know. You know, often people, whether they have hearing loss or not, can hear what's said from the stage with the microphone, and then someone asks the question and sitting in the back row, you have no idea what the question was, so you can't understand the answer either. It's flabbergasts me that this is not a principal point of public speaking. I'm really glad you mentioned that. Ruth Bernstein, you had your hand raised before, but don't see it now. Do you still want to speak? Okay. Let me just go up here in the chat a little bit. Actually, I would say Ruth put her comment in the chat. She said, thank you to Christopher for the presentations and thanks to our card operator. Michael Quinlan had a question that he put in the chat, and I'm going to read that one to you. He says, I'm curious related to the accuracy of captions. Personally, I'm willing to pay the price for some inaccuracies if it reduces the time lag or latency in which the captions are delivered. Am I in the majority or the minority in this preference? I'm definitely with you, Michael. I'd be interested what other people think. Anybody else want to speak about that? Chris, do you know, is there a way to trade off accuracy that's not too damaging for speed?
I don't know how much difference it would play in terms of the latency. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I like that concept. That'd be an interesting experiment to run and see what kind of impact that would make on people that use captions. I'm actually directly connected with the team at Microsoft that works on speech transcriptions in Microsoft Teams. So I might actually reach out and see what they have to say about that.
I don't know if you're looking at the caption box, but a whole lot of people said that they too would give up a little bit of accuracy for greater speed. It's particularly annoying if you're trying to watch any kind of live TV. TV news is terrible. TV sports is even worse. I think a lot of us feel that way.
I was going to say real quick that it's interesting that people prefer like less latency, because I kind of use captions as a second check, right? So like I listen primarily, but then I use the captions as a second check, and I always use it for like, you know, for that second check, it's always going to be a little bit later. So it's like, oh, now I'm going to look, and then it shows up perfectly in time. So it's like, that's kind of useful for my scenario, but then now I can see the scenario where it's like, I'm looking at it primarily and I need to see what it says on like right on spot. So super interesting. I think Ruth was trying to say something. I saw you like talking, but maybe do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, Ruth, do you want to speak?
I think
you're muted. Ruth, we can't hear you.
You're a wonderful advocate for people with hearing loss. And what I've discovered, as you may have discovered, you and Jonesy, is that you're in the distinct minority. How do you get people with hearing loss to speak up, to ask for what they need like you do?
I'm sure everybody has their own approach, but I personally just go, hey, I can't hear you, speak up. Just like super blind, right? let's not waste time here. Let's just tell you to speak up and get on with our conversation. I know there's other people that are like, I'm sorry, can you speak up a little bit? First off, don't say sorry. Second, let's be more to the point and say, hey, speak up a little bit. Can't hear what you're saying. That's my approach. And it's super effective. Like, it kind of like generates this curiosity from, you know, the person I'm talking to. At first they're like, oh, how dare you? But instead they're like, oh, that's interesting. Thanks for letting me know. So I try to take it from a positive perspective. Like, it's kind of like I'm providing feedback to you, but also you're supporting me. So it's a win-win.
You're doing a good job. Keep doing it. Thank you.
I could also respond to the question, my own perspective. Personally, for me, there have been situations before, at times where I do feel embarrassed, do feel, hesitant at times to, speak up, tell someone to repeat themselves. I've gotten much better at that, but I feel, the way to address it, I also agree with what Christopher said, but I also feel the way to address it would be teaching people, at least making them with hearing loss, at least aware that that they're not that there's no issue of asking someone to repeat themselves, that there's that they're not less of a person if they do that, is that it's not that they're not harming anyone else if they do it. The only person they're harming if they don't do it is themselves. So I say, it's just teaching them that they don't have to feel embarrassed by it, they don't have to feel different, that it's just, common sense that they need someone, repeat themselves, just speak up so that they are able to receive and process the information as well as everyone else.
Thanks, that's really interesting. I think one thing that we also do, I'm sure, Ruth, I'm sure you do this yourself, is ask people, if they say it twice, ask them the third time to say it in a slightly different way, to rephrase it, because just repeating the same words over again is not necessarily always helpful. Arlene, do you have a question?
Like a comments and question. I'm so happy to be here. Just on what you were discussing right now, I mean, everybody with masks, if you're not very proactive about what you need, you may as well just fall through the floor. I mean, you have to tell people you're not hearing them, what you suggest they do, so you can have effective communication. If you can't do that, I don't see how anybody communicates with masks these days. But I would just like to say that I wanted to pick on one of the slides that Chris put up there, and that was networking. And I met Chris when he was at Cornell Technion. He was doing a study and he needed people with hearing loss to participate. And I don't know, maybe some of you guys were in that study as well. For those of you who know me, I'm in New Jersey, and Cornell Technion was on Roosevelt Island. And somebody who lived in New York area my entire life, I had never been on Roosevelt Island. Okay, so to meet somebody with hearing loss, but here's even more. How do you get from New Jersey to Roosevelt Island in a car? All right, you don't use that thing that goes across the river. So this was a wonderful challenge, but the best thing was meeting Chris. Okay, so we did the study, and Chris, in all of his good networking advice, invited me back. There were some events on Roosevelt Island. He was involved with a startup, and one piece of advice that I would give to the older generation is to network with the younger generation, and then you'll learn what Xbox is. Because listen, Catherine, talking to you, we're not gonna help each other, but we gotta talk to people like Chris. So I was Chris's audience that day. His parents weren't able to come, and it was just the best experience I ever had. And I just, we're, of course, I saw his beautiful photo he took when he proposed to his fiance. And aside from tech, I tell you, Chris, I was a computer systems program 50 years ago. All right. And so I don't want to take up too much of your time, but being able to meet in a Zoom room, I mean, it all counts, and just continue the just communication and keeping in touch like this. I really thank HLAA New York City for opening up their meetings for all of us. That's just fantastic to be able to be with you all. So thank you.
Yeah, it's amazing seeing you again. Yeah, it's so awesome to see you, and thanks for always being there during my time at Cornell Tech. It was a blessing.
Thank you, Arlene. It's really fun to hear you were in that. And you're absolutely right. I need to talk to more young people. But now I've heard Chris and I've heard Jonesy, so I feel a little more in touch. David, did you want to say something? Your hand's up.
Sorry, I was muted. So Chris, I would really love to hear from you something about Xbox and accessibility. I know it's a big push, but I don't know that much about it there. And I Xbox in the hard of hearing community, and I'm unaware of any accessibility features other than game captioning for this community. Am I missing something?
Yeah, so I recently joined this team probably like 8 months ago, and that's like one of the areas that I want to start being more vocal on is around how do we improve accessibility in Xbox. There's a lot of ways that we can take this. So I can start off by saying, yes, there's a good amount of efforts happening. One of the biggest efforts that we launched was the Xbox Adaptive Controller. I could actually just show a quick picture of it if people are interested. So this is what the. Can you see my screen here?
Yeah, I've personally seen these pictures, but I don't understand them. I mean, intuitively, they don't make.
Yes.
I don't understand exactly how they work.
Yeah, so this is for somebody with a mobility-related impairment or challenge, and they can't, use the Xbox controller with their thumbs, perhaps, or they're having their hands on the back of the controller, and so they're going to use something like this that kind of meets their accommodations more, so that they can actually play Xbox just like we all do. So this is primarily for an individual with some sort of mobility-related impairment. We've also been doing stuff in the space of hearing loss, where we now provide captioning in all of our games. So like you can play a game and turn on captioning, which is really good. We also have also within the game called Forza, I think it's called Forza 5, or it's a car racing game. One of the cool things that we launched in that was this interpreter. So there's actually a sign language interpreter that signs during the game, which I find super cool. And it adds this new layer of accommodations within games. So that's one of the first games that has that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty cool. In terms of captioning within Xbox, like we're talking about like live captioning. I don't think that's a scenario that we have today. That's something that I would like to be vocal about and see if we can move the needle on that. There's also this world of disabilities that are not visible, so like cognitive related disabilities. And also within the world of depression and bullying, like we can maybe bucket those as well as challenges that our gamers experience. And so we've been working on a lot of features to create a safe space for gamers to play in Xbox, whether you have a disability or whether you're having have depression or you're experiencing bullying in gaming. We try to create tools that will remove those kind of barriers. So that's also stuff that we've been doing in the world of accessibility, if we were to categorize it in that space. I think that's a good solid rundown. There's also the last thing I'll say is that there's also game streaming. So like if you were to play a game and you want to share it with your friends for streaming, like live streaming, Xbox just started this effort of providing game streaming with American Sign Language interpreter that's live and will be interpreting what you're saying during the stream. And I can share that in the chat if people are interested in learning more about that. But that's another big investment that we've been working on related
would
to
like to see
accessibility.
I would like
Yeah.
to see that, please.
Yeah. So that's a little bit of a rundown, but there's so much more that we can do in this space.
I have the specific issue, which you probably have experienced, is when I'm playing a cooperative game with hearing, with people with hearing issues, it's complicated to communicate with them. And so always try to figure out what the best way of doing that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we're there yet when it comes to accommodations in the live gaming cooperative scenario. So yeah. We're gonna try to find that link and share it.
Yeah, I may also say some thoughts about what you've been talking about, this whole idea of, audio in gaming, because, people with hearing loss will have a hard time, hearing the audio from the game. One thing that I've been using recently, maybe it'll just give you a good idea of what you could do is, one thing that I've been using recently on my phone is that the problem that I had was that pretty much, like I wouldn't be able to listen since AirPods don't really work for me since, I got like hearing loss. And headphones are pretty hard to, kind of like put on and then maintain on. Say I want to like listen to music while I'm running, or say, I just want to like listen to it more directly. One the new features that my audiologist showed me that I've been using for the last few months was my phone. So here is as I can have Bluetooth linked to my. I can have Bluetooth on my phone. I can have the sound from my phone linked to my hearing devices. So that way my hearing devices kind of become, like my own AirPods. So maybe you could do something possibly similar, like your controllers or your games, where there's a Bluetooth setting where, the audio from the game could immediately link to the hearing aid or processor. And then it becomes like, you don't have to worry about, not only sounds, like being too loud or being too soft for, the person with hearing loss, but also, about those sounds like disrupting the environment, around them. Like with the Bluetooth setting, I've been able to just like listen to music. I've been able to, I can just put my phone in my pocket and it'll link right there when it's when I'm running. The only problem I've kind of found with it is it has a range. So like I think it has like a radius of about 5. It has like a range of about like 5 meters. So if you get too far out of it, you'll hear the audio, but it'll start getting very static. So that's the only issue I found with it, which is its range. But yeah, hopefully that gives you like an idea or something.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely.
Al, would you like to say something? Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jonesy and Chris, for some awesome presentations. I have a question for Chris, because you had mentioned tersely that you were trying to push for the caption on Microsoft Teams. And I just wanted to suggest, if you had any possibility at all, to also push for captioning on Skype. We know Google Meet has free ASR captioning, and that's been a very, very wonderful tool for us. And Zoom, which got it finally, and Apple's going to have it on their FaceTime starting in the fall. But I haven't seen anything about the Microsoft Skype that's going to have that. So if you have any opportunity to push it in that realm, I think we could all benefit from that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Those are good points. There's a really interesting comment in the chat that from Carol CJ, who says that she finds that younger people are much more willing to use the mini mic and other accommodations. they're also much more receptive when you use them. They say, oh, cool, how does this work? Especially in medical settings, however, she finds that older people are suspicious about it. Am I recording them? Am I going to sue them? So she says, I'm shifting my doctors to younger people as much as possible. I think we also, Carol, and you two can also comment on this. I think that, we can be ambassadors and educators everywhere we go by using our captioning devices, using Otter to understand what doctors are saying. I had the same experience with you when I first used Otter in a doctor's office right after COVID. The nurse said, you can't use that in here, it violates HIPAA regulations. And then I said, well, there's no other way I'm going to hear you. So unless they're going to bring in a cart captioner for me, you're in violation of the ADA. And so that was the end of that conversation. She was educated. I don't think she would ever call on that anyone ever again. And then there's also, Chris, you put something in the, it's a link in the text. Can you explain what that's to?
Yeah, so that link is a link to the article that talks about American Sign Language, the American Sign Language Xbox channel that's in Twitch. So this is, just a new way of making live streaming of gaming more accessible. So this article kind of entails that.
Okay.
It was to go off of David's question.
Okay. Are there any other questions? John, if you're still listening, did I ask all of your questions? I can't remember what was up at the top of the chat. If you want to ask something else, just type it in. And Ruth has a comment that live captioning will soon be available in beta on the iPhone 11 and other Apple devices. Piece of information. And Carol CJ is congratulating me for my brilliant strategy, HIPAA versus the ADA. Maybe Chris and Jonesy can invent a video game around about that. Okay, so if there are any more questions, we do have enough time, but we're kind of coming to the end. Anyone has any more questions, quickly raise your hand, and otherwise I'm gonna move on and just tell you a little bit about what's coming up in the this summer and in the fall for us. Chris, yeah.
Yeah, I actually had a question for Jones. So I'm curious about, like, do you plan to live in the dorms, or like that's one question. It's like, do you plan to live at the dorms on campus? Second question is, like, do you plan to get involved on campus? Like what do you think what does your first couple months look like in college?
So to answer your first question, yes, I do plan to live in the dorms. I'm still working that out. Maybe when I get later into the years, if I could find a place that's, say, cheaper, but I could live that's close to the school, I might decide to live off campus. Because I'm pretty sure for the first year it's required that you have to live on campus. And could you repeat your second question, please?
Yeah, the second question was, like, what do you think your first 2 months of college look like? Getting involved on campus, maybe go to your first party. I'm just curious about what you plan to do.
I think I would definitely spend time, I definitely want to get my classes down so that, before I get my social life organized, I definitely want to get my classes organized so then I can build my social life like around that. I say I'll definitely be, looking to meet new people, as only one person from the school that I go to now, Millenium High School, is going to be going to George Washington. She's cool, but I don't really know that well. So I think when we go there, we're just going to go our separate ways. So I'd say that I would definitely be looking for making new friends, people like me, people I can relate to, people who I'm comfortable around. So definitely say the first and I'm also going to be looking at the plan, what it's going to be my academic future. Like, what years can I decide I can pick a major, like what majors are the ones that I already know will be of interest to me. So I definitely say my first 2 months are going to be a mix of, pretty much getting the baseline all set so I can build like a social life around my academic life. And hey, who knows, maybe I could go to our first party.
I'm super excited for you. Like George Washington University, you're going to be right by the Capitol building. Like that's insane. Then you got Georgetown right down the street. You're gonna be living your best life out there.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also American University. Like when I was looking at colleges, a lot of them talked about, because I'm really in the politics and government, a lot of them talked about how, hey, like when I looked at ones in upstate New York or Massachusetts, a lot of them talked about like, hey, you can do an internship down in Washington, D.C., be in a hotel for a few days, for a few weeks. And I was like, wait, why do that when I can literally be in Washington, D.C.?
Tony, do you have a question?
Yes, this is for Jonesy. I'm just curious, have you thought through, I think you asked Chris something about this before, have you thought through what accommodation you're going to ask for your classes?
Of course, like I'm actually in the middle of actually applying for registering for disability services. Because in high school, I had an IEP, which, pretty much it outlined a bunch of goals for me that, also, make sure I have the FM unit. It was also like, make sure the teachers do things such as we mentioned earlier, repeat the question after a student asks it. Here, I won't have an IEP, but I'm used to advocating for myself. So I don't think it should be such a problem to, talk to my professors about it. I've also, I'm working on reaching out to the Center of Disability Services so, they could also send a letter to my professors, even though I'll still have a talk with them, a personal conversation with them, and posting about how, hey, like, it's just better for me if you do this or that. In terms of other services, I'm on the fence on whether I'll use a FM device again. I used it in high school and it was fine, but it did come with a lot of complications. And also, I would also make sure I could sit like at the very front of the class. But that's actually one of the accommodations I'll be requesting, is sitting at the very front of the class so that, I don't necessarily need to rely on the FM unit, because usually when I rely on it, I usually just run into a lot of problems. Also in terms of accommodations, I've actually been working with my speech therapist to, kind of consider one, which is like, say in my dorm room, a fire alarm that kind of like flashes instead of, makes a lot of noise. So that, in case there's danger, I will be able to, because, I'm not really going to be woken up because I'm deaf. I'm not really going to be woken up by a loud sound. And I don't really know, my roommate for all I know could be out of, the city that day. So that night. So, it would just be useful to have that. And there was one more accommodation. I'm trying to remember what it was. There was one more.
I think you're really smart to be thinking about alerting devices. You've given it a lot of thought. I'm just curious, have you ever used CART? To have a live transcriber. Have you ever used that in any of your classes? And if so, was that helpful?
In 10th grade, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit in, like March, I actually did have, someone who worked with me, and I did have a computer that would take down, live notes, live captioning from the FM unit that the teacher would wear. We didn't use it much as we ran into a lot of technical difficulties with it just like not really working at all. And then sometimes, the stuff that I write down would be accurate. So, and then after I finally came back, we didn't use it on Zoom during 11th grade, during the COVID year, I did use the captioning on Zoom, which was very helpful. And also this year, we've been using the FM, but we haven't gone back to the captioning.
Okay, I just want to mention this one thing before time runs out. You might, I wish I had known about this stuff. I really was having huge problems, when I was in college with hearing classes, that to really think about CART. Lauren Schechter, who owns Total Caption, who captions all of our meetings. I've known Lauren for a long time, and she's worked with many students. She really develops a relationship with them, and she's carded them for their 4 years of college, and then she's carded them when they've gotten their master's degrees and when they've also gone to law school. And it's just, not only does it get you the information you need and get it accurately, but it's just a tremendous support because they really understand what you're going through. So if that's something you're interested in, we can connect you with Lauren if you had questions. Maybe now, I'm sure it's probably all done remotely. I think years ago, she probably sat next to the person, and maybe that doesn't happen anymore, but classes are when she's even carded trigonometry. I don't know how she does it, but you're going to need accuracy, and she can give you that. And also trying this stuff for yourself when you become an attorney is really going to be great work experience for you. So I think you're so on the right track. You're wonderful. You're smart. You obviously deserve this. I wish you so much luck. This is great.
Thank you so much. Thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate it.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody. And I just want to say a few things before we leave for those who are here. Our meetings are going to start up again in the fall. We have September and October already lined up. Really great meetings scheduled. The first is about hearing professionals with hearing loss, audiologists and ENTs who have hearing loss themselves. And we actually have a couple of younger audiologists who will be on that panel, and we have an older audiologist who will be on the panel. So we're hoping that we'll get some comparison about what life and schooling is like and work life was like for them. There were a number of conflicts with our usual schedule. So we'll be meeting this year, 22-23, on the third Tuesday of the month. And of course, we'll be sending out announcements. So nobody really needs to note that down. I also want to say that a convention is coming up and some of us are going. We have in the past sometimes had convention diaries, but we have a new Facebook page, which I'm going to ask Holly and Gail if they'll send it out, the information out about another time, because we can, I think, post daily on that Facebook page about what's going on in convention, those of us who are there, and people who aren't there can ask us questions. I think it's a good tool for that kind of thing. We also, before our first meeting next September, have the Walk for Hearing, and you're also going to be hearing about that in blasts and sun out periodically over the summer. We will have an in-person walk, and we'll also have David Landsberger doing what he did last year, which is basically carrying a camera with him and being a live virtual communicator. So please keep an eye out for the walk. We support Nationals work, really important work that they do in lobbying the federal government and other things like that. And 40% of what our team earns supports the chapter's work. So if you keep your eyes open, either join the Walk New York team. You don't actually have to walk, just join our team and do some fundraising yourself, or just make a donation to the Walk New York team. We'll be able to keep on doing all this stuff that we do. We haven't talked at all about advocacy tonight, but that is also one of the things that we're doing. And I hope we're going to have a chapter meeting on that next year. So our time is up. I want to thank Chris for that really terrific presentation. And I want to thank Jonesy for applying for the scholarship and just being such a fantastic award winner. And I truly do hope you'll come back and maybe run the city someday. You'd bring a good perspective to things. So thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you, I hope, on September 20th. Okay, thanks. And thank you to our captioner.